All right, this is our problem for our Unit 8 test review from AP Classroom. So we have the experimental farm class. This represents crops grown on an experimental farm. The experimental farm is a rectangular tract of land that is divided into a grid of equal-sized plots. Each plot in the grid contains one type of crop. The crop yield of each plot is measured in bushels per acre. So a farm plot is represented by the plot class. And here's a definition of the plot class. So we have crop type and crop yield. We have a constructor, which they didn't show us how that's implemented. And then we can get the crop type and we can get the crop yield for a plot. All right, a grid of equal-sized plots is represented by a two-dimensional array of plot objects, which is called farm plots. This is declared in the experimental farm class. A partial definition for that class is given to us here. So we have our two-dimensional plot array called farm plots. We have a constructor, implementation not shown to us. And then we are going to implement two methods of this class. One of them is called get highest yield, and the other one's called same crop. All right, so the get highest yield method will return the plot object with the highest yield among the plots in farm plots, with the crop type specified by the parameter C. If more than one plot has the highest yield, any of these plots may be returned. If no plot exists containing the specified type of crop, this method returns null. Assume the experimental farm object F has been created such that the farm plots array contains the following crop type and crop yield values. All right, so this is what our farm plot looks like, two-dimensional array. We have our types given to us there as strings, and then our yields given to us there as ints. Okay, so if get highest yield of corn was the method call, then it would return the item at row 1, column 2. So corn right here, because 62 is the biggest number with corn. Get highest yield of peas would return either 1, 0, peas 30, or 3, 2, peas 30 down here. 30 is the biggest amount. Get highest yield of bananas would return null because there are no bananas in this crop. All right, so we're going to write this method down here. Okay, so we have our title there. We don't need to rewrite that. Let's open it up. Okay, so I need to return a plot type. So I'm going to create a plot variable, plot, and I'm going to call this max plot because I want to return the highest amount. Okay, and so if you have a class type and you want to initialize it, you have to initialize it to something, and especially for this problem because we want to return null at the end. So a good thing to initialize a class type is to null. It's kind of like initializing a primitive to 0, like int x equals 0. All right, so we're initializing it to null right there. All right, that's going to allow us to just return max plot. And if nothing happens, if we never update it, it'll return null at the end, just like it's supposed to. Otherwise, we'll update it to one of these other things, and it'll return the right thing there. All right, so we also need a variable that's going to keep track of the integers, numbers, that we can compare them to. So I'm going to just call this int just max, and we'll set that equal to 0 to start out with. Okay, so now I need to travel through my 2D array. Whoops, I don't need that yet. All right, so we are going to make a for loop, and I'm going to start with the rows. So int r equals 0. R is less than farm plots dot length. R plus plus. And then our next for loop will travel through the columns. So int c equals 0. C is less than farm plots of 0 dot length. And C plus plus. All right, so now we want to compare each yield with our max variable. And if it's bigger, we want to update the max variable to be the new yield. And we also want to update our max plot, our plot type, to that certain plot. All right, so if farm plots of R of C dot. Okay, so I'm going to go back for a second. This is our plot class. Remember, all farm plots are type plot. So any of the plot methods we can use. Okay, so we want to do get crop yield, which is going to return that integer value for crop yield. Okay, so farm plots of RC dot get crop yield. Okay, if that is greater than max, then we want to update max to be this get crop yield. So max equals farm plots of R of C dot get crop yield. And then we also want to update max plot. Max plot equals, and then it's farm plots of RC, which is a plot type. All right, so this loop is going to travel through one by one. We're going to check every crop yield against our maximum. I guess one thing I forgot to do, now that I'm thinking about it, is we have to check and see if what the plot type is. So we need our plot type to match this string C. So let's see where I can fit this in here. All right, so I'm gonna have to go back and modify my if statement a little bit here. So I'm going to erase what I have here because I want to check if it's equal to if the crop type is equal to this string first. Because if it's not equal to the string, then I don't want my if to do anything. Okay, so if farm plots of RC dot, okay, and we're using the other method now, get crop type. Okay, that's going to return a string for the crop type, and I'm going to match that up to the string parameter C. So if farm plots of RC dot get crop type dot equals C. Okay, so if that's true, and farm plots of RC dot get crop yield is greater than max. All right, good. Fit it all in there. Okay, so if this is false, then nothing happens. Okay, if this is true and this is false, nothing happens. All right, but if they're both true, then we're going to update max to be the new maximum crop yield, and we're going to update max plot to be that plot right there. All right, this should be good to go now, so we can close out this for loop here. We can close out our outer for loop, and then we just need to return our plot type that we made, so return max plot. Okay, so if neither one of these things ever becomes true, then our max plot stays equal to null, and we'll return null at the end, like in the bananas example. Otherwise, it will update to return our maximum value. Okay, so here's the answer key for this one. So points earned for traversing all elements of the farm plots array without bounds errors. Okay, so that is our two loops combined. All right, starting at 0, going to dot length, and it's less than dot length, not less than or equal to. That would be a bounds error. Accesses an element of farm plots in the context of the loop. So inside my loop, I should be accessing an element of farm plots. I do that multiple times inside here, but any one of those would give me that point. Accesses the crop type and crop yield of an element of farm plots. All right, so we did our get crop type right there. I almost forgot to do that, but I remembered it before we finished. And then get crop yield right over here. So we're good to go there. Compares the crop type of an element to the parameter C. So that's doing our get crop type dot equals C right there. That gets us that point. Okay, implements a find max algorithm in the context of this 2D array, initializes, compares, and updates maximum yield and plot containing maximum yield. Okay, so initializing is our two initializations up here. Updating is inside this if statement. We update those values to the new values there. So we're good to go there. And then returns plot containing max yield or null if appropriate. Right, that's our return here at the end. Okay, if you want to see their answer, that's what it looks like. Okay, the only thing they really did differently is they created another plot type inside the for loop. So they didn't have to keep writing farm plots of RC like we had to write that a whole lot. So it just makes the code a little bit shorter to write, but not a required step there. Okay, there's a part B. Okay, so write the same crop method, which returns true if all the plots in a given column of farm plots grow the same crop and returns false otherwise. Okay, assume the farm object has been initialized with this. So same thing we had before. So if a same crop of 0 was called, this column does not have all the same ones. So that would return false. But same crop of 1, corn, 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 that would return true because they're all the same. All right, so here we go. It's a Boolean. Okay, oftentimes we want to create a variable at the top that matches the type we have to return, but this time you don't actually have to do that because you can just return false, return true inside your method, and that's going to take care of our returns. Okay, so we do not need a nested loop this time. They're giving us the column, and then we need to travel through that one column. That's it. Okay, so we need one loop, and really we're traveling through the rows, right? We're going to start at row. We're not going to start at 0, but we're going to start at row whatever and go to row next one, next one, next one. Okay, so I'm going to use r as my variable. Int r equals 0. R is less than farm plots dot length. Okay, since we're traveling through the rows, we just want farm plots dot length, not farm plots of 0. The of 0 would have us travel through the columns instead of the rows. All right, and then so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set a string. Okay, we're comparing the strings, the crop types. So I'm going to set up a string. I'm actually going to do this up above here. So I'm going to set up a string. I'm going to call this a crop, and I'm going to set that equal to the first one. Okay, so that's going to be like if we're in column 1, that's going to be corn, or column 2, corn again. Okay, so I'm going to set this equal to farm plots of 0. So I'm always going to start row 0 and then call, which is the column parameter given to me there, and then dot get crop type. Okay, so now I actually don't need to double check row equals 0. So I'm actually going to change my for loop here, and I'm going to start at row equals 1 instead of 0. All right, and so think about like your sequencing here matters. So we need them all to be the same to return true. So we want like our return true to be at the very end. So like if our entire loop runs, then we can return true after that. So I want to set up my if statement inside here to return false. All right, because if even one of them is different, that's an automatic return false, and we can stop. We don't need to check anymore after the first one that's different. Okay, so I'm going to check if the string starting in row 1 is not equal to the string I just set equal to here, because they all have to match this top one, right? They all have to be the same. So I'm just going to check if each one matches this, and if they all match, we'll go through the whole loop and we'll return at the end. And if one of them doesn't match, then that'll trigger our return false, which will stop our method and we'll be done. All right, so we're going to start with an exclamation point for not, and then we are going to do crop dot equals. Crop is a string, so use the dot equals method, and we want to check if it's not equal to farm plots of our call. Okay, again, we're using the column parameter given to us in the method, and then dot get crop type. All right, so close your equal sign, close your if statement, open up the if. So if these are not equal to each other, that's an automatic return false. And that return stops our program, right? So we won't access anything else below that. All right, that's really all we need. Close your if, close your for loop. If the return false never happens, that means it's true. And so at the very end, before you close your method, return true. And we got it. All right, so let's look at the answer key for this one. 3 points available. So traverses the given column of farm plots without bounds errors. So that's doing my for loop, starting at 1, going to length. Okay, and it's okay to start at 1 because we did do the 0 up here for the string. Accesses the crop types of 2 elements of farm plots. Okay, so I accessed element 0 crop type and then element R of crop type. Okay, so that's 2 different ones. Determines the value to be returned as false if any 2 crop types are different, and true if they're all the same. So that's doing our return false with the not equals and then return true otherwise. Okay, and their answer pretty much matches mine just about exactly. All right, there's their string. Row starts at 1. All right, not equals, returning false, and then returning true. All right, hopefully you enjoyed that. See you next time.